everybody, before we get into the Season 3 recap, if you need a Season 2 recap or a Season 1 recap, just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. I got you covered. Season 3 kicks off 1 year after the events of Season 2. In fact, the events of Season 2 and everything that happened with Stormfront are written into the new movie Dawn of the Seven. Some people are doing great, like Huey, who was with Starlight, and the two are official. And he continues to work with Victoria Newman at the Federal Bureau of Superhuman Affairs, where he's kind of looked at as a superhero himself because he's known as the guy that took down Stormfront. The A-Train is also doing better because he's back in the 7, although he hasn't raced in over a year, and questions are starting to come up about when he will race again. He makes a ton of excuses, but you get the feeling that he's not really interested in racing. Then there's Homelander. He's not doing so great because after a year, he's still answering questions about how he was duped by Stormfront, and he gives the same answer as always. He was a man who fell for the wrong woman. He's been doing a lot of soul-searching, and he's really excited for everybody to meet the, quote, real him. Although the real him is getting really tired of answering that same question. Billy, Kimiko, and Frenchie aren't doing so bad. They're sort of working for the Federal Bureau of Superhuman Affairs, or FBSA for short. He sort of searches out all the scummy superheroes that really should be locked up and in jail. And he's gotten a lead on one that they've been searching for, a superhero named Termite. One of his sources has indicated that Termite is having a party that night, and he wants to get the green light from Huey to go in and take this guy down. Huey tells Billy, I'll talk to Victoria. But Billy ends up bullying him into saying, okay, you've got the green light, just don't kill him or murder him or any of that. So that night, Kimiko, Billy, and Frenchie all head up to this penthouse apartment where, yeah, they're partying all right. I mean, they're doing blow, they're drinking, and then they see the person they're after, Termite. Termite's superhero ability is he's able to shrink down and then quickly get back up to normal size. But when he shrinks down, he continues to have normal strength. This dude is just out of control. And at this party, he's really nothing more than a parlor trick. He transforms back up to normal size, and he heads into a bedroom with a guy that he's going to hook up with. After doing a lot of blow, the rando tells Termite, I want you inside me. Now, this isn't just normal sex we're talking about here. Termite climbs into a very sensitive area of this guy's body. Starts walking around, everything's going great, but Coke Nose gets the best of him. He sneezes, and when he does that, he transforms back to normal size. Well, since he was in this guy's body, that guy dies pretty quickly. Frenchie walks in and sees this guy's body just torn up. Frenchie tells him, I saw nothing, I'm going to get out of here, but Termite says, wait. And then he transforms down to little size where Frenchie can't see him, and he starts beating Frenchie up. Luckily for Frenchie, Kimiko and Billy end up showing up and saving him, trapping little Termite, putting him in a bag of cocaine, and it leads to Termite having an overdose. So that's going to be one less scumbag you'd figure the FBSA has to deal with. When Huey gets into the office in the morning, Victoria asks him how the surveillance went with Termite, and Huey hasn't heard anything from Billy, but he says, I'm sure it's fine. Victoria doesn't think so, though. After a year of having Billy on the books, she's noticed a trend, and that trend is always having to apologize for Billy Butcher's actions. Huey, being Billy's friend, tries to stick up for him. And the way that Victoria looks at it is, Billy Butcher is somebody you absolutely want to go to war with. The problem is, right now they're in peacetime. Huey ends up leaving the meeting with Victoria, and as he's walking through the office, he sees somebody he recognizes. It's a guy from the Dawn of 7. It's a guy that he saw at the Dawn of 7 premiere who was trying to get Victoria Newman's attention, but he was calling her Nadia. Stewie finds it super odd that this guy showed up in the office, and the guy tells him, I'm not leaving until I talk to Nadia. Huey explains that her name isn't Nadia, but the nervous guy says, we're best friends. She'll remember me. Security escorts him out, but right before he leaves, he says to Huey, tell her it's Tony. She'll know. Later in the day, Huey has to meet back up with Victoria, but he never brings up Tony in the meeting. She tells him that she's heard from Vought, and the bad news is Termite is off the table. Vought closed a huge endorsement with him for Terminex. And after Butcher ended up force-feeding him a bunch of cocaine, Victoria didn't have much leverage in the issue. So Termite is going to the Global Wellness Retreat in Malibu. In return, the FBSA is getting a bunch of C-listers. Now, all of these guys are bad news, but Huey wanted to catch the big fish, and the big fish was Termite, a guy they've been chasing for months. So he's not exactly happy about this, but Victoria tries to pitch it to him anyway. After talking with Victoria, he has to go give the bad news to Billy. And Billy is even more pissed off than Huey, although Huey puts on a face like he's all for this move. He tries to sell it to Billy like Victoria tried to sell it to him. Billy ends up screaming at him, "Huey, you're working for Vaught." Huey yells back, "We're actually winning." And Billy points out locking up a couple of nobodies isn't winning. They get into a pretty big screaming match, and what Huey figures it boils down to is the fact that he left. But Huey doesn't think he's the only one that Billy's pissed at. He figures that Billy's also pissed because Mother's Milk left as well. He also knows that Billy is going through a lot after Becca died, but he also thinks that Billy needs to get over it. And it's hard to try to get over it when Billy still has Ryan to think about. Since his mother's death, Ryan is living with Grace, and he's protected by a bunch of federal agents. Billy does go to visit him, but Billy also doesn't want to get too attached to Ryan. Now, Ryan's dad, Homelander, would love to see him, but he's not allowed. He's also been on that 12-month PR tour after hooking up with a Nazi. As he's heading to one such interview, he meets up with an old friend, the Deep. And even the Deep is doing better. He wrote a book about leaving the church, which he calls a cult, and the book is a bestseller. He's also married to a woman named Cassandra. His numbers are going back up. Even Malcolm Gladwell wrote about him. But when Homelander sees the Deep, all he can think of is, how did you get the slot on this show before me? And the Deep doesn't really know how to answer that. The intimidation factor is still very real. And it leads to the Deep telling Homelander, I don't know, I'm still just like a nobody compared to you. Homelander then heads to the interview, and they ask him the same question that everybody else does. As Homelander is answering that question, Stan Edgar is having a meeting with presidential candidate Bob Singer. Vaught has created a dose of temporary V. It'll give anyone who takes it superpowers for 24 hours. And Edgar wants to sell it to the Department of Defense. But Bob Singer realizes that that's going to be a lot of money. Over the course of a month-long operation, we're talking $60 million per soldier. He's not really interested in doing that. But Edgar sort of points out that Vaught recently contributed a lot of money to Singer's campaign for presidency. He's kind of running on this platform that he's this cowboy, and there's nothing more cowboy than giving the soldiers of the United States superpowers. While Bob appreciates the contributions and he sort of agrees with the line of thinking, he's already seen that soups in the army are a disaster. And Edgar kind of sighs and says, you're right. The problem was making the super into heroes. We made them figures to be worshipped. The fame, the movies, it ruined them. He admits to Singer that in 5 years, he wants to be out of the superhero business entirely. He says, Vaught should be a serious company, a defense and pharmaceutical company, not a daycare for these prima donnas. But the thing is, you won't have to worry about the prima donna nature because your soldiers will only be super, and they'll only be super temporarily. But Singer has another issue. Calling it Compound V is a problem because all people can think of is Nazis. This after Vaught had a Nazi selling it. He says to Edgar, this isn't going to fly in Congress. But Edgar points out that he still has a few strings to pull in Congress. After meeting with Singer, Edgar calls a meeting with both Homelander and Starlight. But he never mentions to Homelander initially that he's going to be meeting with the both of them. So when Homelander shows up and he sees Starlight, he's pretty confused. He tries to kick her out of the meeting, but Edgar says, no, I called you both here. And then he tells them that he wants Starlight to be co-captain of the Seven. This is shocking to both Starlight and Homelander, but to Edgar, it makes perfect sense. Starlight's numbers have never been higher. In fact, she's the highest Q rating the Seven has ever seen. Homelander, on the other hand, has been doing damage control for a year and none of it's working. Starlight doesn't really want it, and it seems like she doesn't want it because she knows that Homelander will hate her for it, and Homelander certainly will hate her for it. And then it's Homelander who ends up getting kicked out of that meeting by Stan. Stan Edgar understands the hesitation from Starlight, but he also tells her, Homelander is under control and we both know why. He then pitches her on this idea, saying that she will decide what the Seven do, what causes they support. She's basically going to have full authority to fill the team's empty slots. And that idea is very enticing. And Starlight is already in the works to try to replace at least one member of the Seven. Vaught has set her up as a judge on this reality show to find the missing member. But one of the members that has made it all the way to the finals is her old boyfriend. He used to be known as Drummer Boy, and he was in this hit boy band back in the day. Since growing up, though, he has changed his name to Supersonic, and he's looking to get into the Seven. The TV show really highlights the fact that Starlight and Supersonic used to be a thing. But a lot of it is scripted. The truth is, they did used to date, but they were also super religious, and while they lost their virginity to each other, they just appear to be friends now. Don't tell that to Huey. He shows up at one of the tapings and he sees Starlight getting super chummy with Supersonic, and you can tell it just makes him uncomfortable. While he tells Starlight that it's great, they're just super close, Starlight can tell that he's nervous, and she says you have nothing to worry about. They then head to her trailer, and Starlight tells Huey about the big news, the co-captaincy. And this would make Starlight the first female co-captain of any super team. She feels like with this new role, she could be a role model, but she could also do real good. And Huey's worried that Homelander will get so pissed off, he'll just murder her. They end up getting into a little bit of a fight when Huey brings up Supersonic, and it costs Huey a night of adult fun with Starlight. With his night suddenly freed up, Huey heads back to the office, but as he's leaving, he sees Victoria, and he sees that she's being followed by that guy from the office and from the movie premiere, so he decides to tail him. They head to an alley, and it turns out Victoria does know the guy. She tells the guy, who's named Tony, that she no longer goes by Nadia. He tells her that she has a platform, so she should tell everybody what happened to them at Red River. She explains it's not that easy, but Tony continues to beg until finally she says, "All right, I will." But then Tony notices that his nose is bleeding, and he knows that Victoria's doing it. Turns out Tony's a soup, so he pushes her pretty far, and the two end up fighting. Victoria is defending herself, but she ends up killing Tony. All of this is being seen and overheard by Huey, who is hiding behind a dumpster. Victoria has no idea that he's there. And with Tony's dead body just lying in this alley, Huey overhears her pick up the phone, call somebody, and say, "I'm in trouble. I need a team," and then she gives this person the address and heads home. While Huey was finishing up his day, Starlight headed back up to Stan's office and tells him that she accepts. And it doesn't take long for Starlight and Homelander to start doing a photo shoot for the new press release. But all of this, the bad PR for 12 months, having to answer the same question, the fact that he can't see his kid, and now the fact that his captaincy is being ripped from him, has Homelander reaching a boiling point, and he takes it out on the A-Train. While walking through the hallways, he sees the A-Train drinking a milkshake, and he just rips into him, because he's noticed that the A-Train has just been stuffing his face full of carbs. The A-Train tries to act like he needs it for running, but Homelander, along with everybody else, knows that he doesn't run anymore. When the A-Train tries to whisper, "Man, screw you," Homelander ends up grabbing him and bullying the crap out of him. He then stomps up to his penthouse apartment, and he vents to Stormfront, or at least what's left of her. I mean, she's in rough shape. Her body is super burned up, looks like she's missing some of her legs, but that doesn't stop her from helping out her man and, rubbing him off a little bit. While he starts talking about how these people will worship him again one day, she brings up how he's going to lead an army of Aryan brothers, and he stops and says, "Wait, no, we don't need a master race. I am the master race." While Homelander appears to be still in love with Stormfront, he's just so sick of her talking about this master race BS. But that little temper tantrum that he had in the hallway was seen by Queen Maeve. She texts Billy, "We need to meet," because it turns out that Queen Maeve is Billy's source. The first question she asks is, "What the hell happened with Termite? My info was good." And Billy just says, "Don't ask." But she didn't come there for Termite. She brought with her a file about an old superhero named Soldier Boy who died in the 80s. Soldier Boy was the lead of a superhero group called Payback. And before the 7, Payback was the #1 superhero group. The female lead in Payback was named Crimson Countess, who coincidentally was in a relationship with Soldier Boy. And Soldier Boy's sidekick was this guy named Gunpowder. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that Black Noir was in Payback. He then joined the 7. But according to the news, Soldier Boy died. He was trying to stop a nuclear meltdown in Ohio, and he got buried beneath a reactor. Billy always thought it was fishy, and Queen Maeve says, "You're right. If you read the file, he died from something called BCL Red." And Soldier Boy was nearly as strong as Homelander. So whatever this HCL Red stuff is, Queen Maeve wants to get it because she wants to take Homelander down. She tells Billy that if anybody knows what truly happened to Soldier Boy, it's going to be Gunpowder or Crimson Countess. She then digs into her pocket and pulls out the Temp V. She gives it to Billy, and Billy doesn't want to take it. He doesn't have any interest in ever becoming a soup. But Maeve knows he's going to need it because Payback, while they might be a bunch of D-bags, they're really powerful. And if Billy's going to go up against them, he's going to need to be a soup. Maeve then heads out the door, and Billy is looking at the Temp V, but he sees somebody standing on his balcony, and it's Homelander. No idea if Homelander heard what Queen Maeve was talking about, But he showed up because he wants to know where Ryan is, and Billy's not about to give the location. They then start insulting each other back and forth, and Billy finally asks him, dude, what are you doing here? And Homelander is just sick of Vought and the Bureau. He thinks that what they're doing to him, and Billy for that matter, is just treating them like chess pieces. So while he's enemies with Billy, it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And he asks Butcher, what if you and I share a common destiny, sort of a scorched earth, shock and awe, and then in the end, only one of us will be left standing? Billy says that what he wants in the end is for only one of them to be left standing, but he doesn't fully agree to go into business with Homelander. The last person we haven't talked about is Mother's Milk, who, just like Huey, left Billy, and he's turned into a real family man. He heads to his daughter Janine's birthday party, but he is having trouble because his ex, Monique, is now with a new guy, Todd, so he's kind of co-parenting. While Todd seems like a nice guy, Mother's Milk definitely would like to be with Monique. He's really been trying to do a good job of rehabilitating the relationship and his image for her. But even though to them it looks like he left that superhero hunting in the past, after he tucks Janine in, he heads to a closet where he has a bunch of news clippings and information on where to find Soups. And one of the news clippings is about how Soldier Boy was cleared of the wrongdoings in the death of a Queen's family. In fact, most of the clippings have to do with payback. In episode 2, Billy wakes up to a FaceTime from Ryan, and Ryan's just trying to make chit-chat, but Billy is going through so much stress that he kind of snaps at him. Ryan made a movie that he wants Billy to watch, and Billy just snaps, yeah, I'll get to it later. Billy ends up checking himself when Ryan asks, are you mad at me? And Billy realizes just what a douchebag he's being. After apologizing to Ryan and getting off of FaceTime, Billy needs to get to work. He sends Kimiko and Frenchie to handle Crimson Countess. He himself is going to take on Gunpowder, but he's definitely going to need help with finding out what happened to Soldier Boy. And for that, he's going to need Mother's Milk. So he pays him a visit. Not great timing, though. Mother's Milk has Janine over that weekend. Not like Billy really cares, though. Billy tells Mother's Milk that he doesn't believe that Soldier Boy died the way they said. And if there's a weapon out there that killed him, it can definitely kill Homelander. Mother's Milk doesn't really have any interest in helping Billy out, but Billy does bring up what happened to his family. And that's when Mother's Milk snaps at him. Billy's about to leave, but Mother's Milk stops him and says, I might have something that could help you out in my files. And it's a paper on Gunpowder. But after Billy leaves, all Mother's Milk can think about is Soldier Boy and what happened to his family. And it's got him on edge. When he drops Janine off at Monique's, he explains to Monique that he tried. I mean, he gave it 12 months, but it's all he can think about. And Monique gives him her blessing to go do what he has to do. Billy, meanwhile, went to go find Gunpowder, and he finds him at a gun convention. And even though Bob Singer has Vaught's blessing, he does not have Gunpowder's blessing. Gunpowder is preaching to a choir that if Bob Singer is elected, there goes the Second Amendment. Billy listens to all of this, but bides his time and waits for Gunpowder to head to the bathroom. When he does, Billy tells him, hey man, I'm your biggest fan. But then he starts insulting him, pointing out it must have been really tough to be Soldier Boy's sidekick. And then hinting at the fact that Soldier Boy might have sexually abused Gunpowder back in the day because Gunpowder was so young. Gunpowder tries to brush it off by telling him he doesn't know what he's talking about, but Billy in fact does, because the piece of paper that Mother's Milk gave to him was a memo from Vought that they buried. And it was a complaint that Gunpowder filed to Vought begging them to take him off of payback. And the reason was Soldier Boy's habitual abuse. Butcher threatens to blackmail Gunpowder if he doesn't give him the information he needs on what exactly happened with Soldier Boy. And if Gunpowder is thinking about killing him, well, that memo can reach the internet in about an hour. But Gunpowder just kind of shakes his head and says, I don't really care. Soldier Boy never touched me like that. But what Billy said really irked Gunpowder, even though he didn't show it in the bathroom. When Billy goes to his car, he starts getting shot at. Gunpowder is able to hit him in the leg and also graze his face, but Billy wisely uses a distraction with the car alarms and is able to get away. Frenchie and Kimiko, meanwhile, were out there looking for Crimson Countess, and they find her at a Vought amusement park. She does a daily show there all about Soldier Boy, about what a hero he is, about the fact that he's from the greatest city in America, Philadelphia, the birthplace of this country. And for a little bit of money, you can pay to actually meet her, although she's a shell of her former self. Frenchie and Kimiko do that, and this is tough for Kimiko because she's actually a really big fan of her, but Frenchie lets her know that they're there to do a job. So Kimiko, using her super strength, is able to jack Crimson Countess up against a wall, and they ask the same question that Billy asked to Gunpowder. What happened to Soldier Boy? Crimson Countess sticks to the story that Soldier Boy died a hero. And luckily for her, she's saved when the next group of autograph seekers comes in. Crimson Countess is able to push Kimiko and Frenchie back, escape into the park where she makes a pretty big scene by killing a guy by accident. Now Huey is on to his own search mission to find out what exactly happened with Victoria and what Red River is. Through their connections, Huey and Starlight were able to figure out that Red River is a group home that is owned by Vought subsidiaries. They figure that must be where Vicky grew up. Huey starts cursing himself. He feels like an idiot who should have seen this earlier, that he was working for a soup the entire time. He also knows that he can't just leave. She's going to know something's up. He has to go into work. He definitely doesn't want to tell Billy. He doesn't want to hear the end of it. He figures Starlight and him can just do the job themselves. But Starlight has to go off to do a sound check because that day is Homelander's big birthday spectacular. So she tells him, don't do anything while I'm gone. He doesn't listen. He decides to head to Red River himself, posing as a possible adoptive parent. And Red River is a group home for soups. As he's talking to the head of the house, though, behind her on the television screen is Starlight and himself. And he tries to get out of there, but one of the kids points to the TV, and the woman recognizes him. She knows Huey is not only dating Starlight, but she knows that Huey is working for the feds. And she thinks this is really weird. So, acting quickly, he tells her that he's sterile. Him and Starlight are thinking about adopting, and she didn't want to make news by showing up, so she secretly sent him. This works. They head to the woman's office and start looking at potential children, but while doing that, he sneaks in a flash drive and steals all of the files on hand. When he gets back to his car, he starts looking the ones up from Victoria Newman. Sure enough, her name used to be Nadia, and she murdered a lot of people using her powers before she could truly understand them. She never was adopted, technically, but she was taken in by Stan Edgar. Stan Edgar was like a father figure to her. After getting this information, Huey had to head back to the office, and the first person he just happens to run into is Victoria Newman. She starts questioning where he's been, what he's been up to. She's definitely suspicious of something, but Huey ends up getting saved when Starlight shows up out of the blue and says that Huey was with her and they just recently got into a fight. They put on a great acting display, making it pretty awkward for Victoria until eventually she leaves. Huey then takes Starlight to his car to show her exactly what he found in that group home, and she's just as shocked as he was. Huey, though, is on edge, and he reveals to Starlight that he's just really frustrated. He felt like everything was starting to break his way. I mean, Victoria was truly a friend, or at least he thought. It turns out he was just a puppet. He then tells her that he may have signed them up to adopt a child. That's the last thing she needs. Starlight has also had quite a day. She headed to the sound check for this ridiculous birthday spectacular. There, she introduces Supersonic to Homelander, and Supersonic is a huge fan of Homelander, but he quickly finds out exactly the kind of person Homelander is when Homelander insults him because of the previous relationship with Starlight. They then get down to the actual rehearsal, and Homelander has made a few changes that Starlight does not like because Homelander is trying to paint his co-captain as really nothing more than a sex object. And she's not into that. She definitely does not want to sing Happy Birthday like Marilyn Monroe did. And when Homelander tries to make her, Stan Edgar jumps in and says she doesn't have to if she doesn't want to. Her numbers are trending way better than yours. People are actually tuning in for her. People might DVR it for you. So right now, she's calling the shots. So now she's got Huey telling her she might be a mom, and Homelander is definitely pissed off at her. But Homelander has to get going because he has to do his annual birthday save. There's a woman about to commit suicide on a rooftop, and there are cameras all over the place waiting for Homelander to save her, but Homelander's heart just isn't into it. He nicely asks her to step back from the ledge because he knows that it's a foregone conclusion that even if she jumps, he's going to catch her, but then his mood completely changes when he looks up at a TV screen that's overhead, and he sees that Stormfront committed suicide that morning. She just couldn't bear being a charred-up potato. And when Homelander sees that, his entire mood changes to, please step back from the ledge, to, why don't you just jump? He basically forces the woman to jump. He mourns for a little bit, but he has to head off to his birthday show. And he is in quite a mood. A-Train is the one to introduce him, and A-Train is wearing a new outfit that was not approved by Ashley. A-Train has been trying to redo his image with African roots because he no longer runs and doesn't want to tell anybody that. And this new outfit is pretty cringeworthy. It's not even really acknowledged on the show, though. He introduces both Starlight and Homelander just comments on his weight still. Well, Starlight starts talking about one of the foundations that's close to her heart, which is the Starlight House. It's a nonprofit dedicated to helping homeless and at-risk youth. Somebody from the stands yells that Homelander's Nazi died, and it's pretty audible. But he keeps a straight face even though he is seething inside. Starlight tries to surprise him by telling the audience that he has agreed to dedicate $10 million to the Starlight House, but he just says, nope, no, not at all. And he goes completely off script. He basically tells the audience that they need him. They don't need this crybaby that he's made out to be. He's being controlled by Vought, and they're controlling just about everybody. If you don't think you're being controlled by Vought, you are. He's done being controlled because at the end of the day, he's the real hero. Now, Billy Butcher did not see this on live television because when he got home, he was patching his wounds, and he finally opens up his computer to watch that video that Ryan sent him. It's a stop-motion video using Legos and an old voicemail from Becca. And it does cheer Billy up quite a bit. He decides to call a friend, Huey. He tells Huey that he was right. Things are good, Ryan's good. He really should just leave it well enough alone. And then out of nowhere, Huey decides to be honest with him and tell him that Newman's a soup. And if they're going to take Vought down, they're going to have to do whatever it takes. And whatever it takes is the Billy Butcher way. This wakes up Billy quite a bit. He ends up taking the Temp V, going and visiting Gunpowder one final time. And when Gunpowder shoots Billy, he realizes that bullets no longer affect him. Billy beats the crap out of Gunpowder until Gunpowder tells him the truth. He was never sexually abused by Soldier Boy. Soldier Boy never Superman that hoe. It was really just hazing gone too far. As for what happened to him, yeah, he didn't die in that accident. But Gunpowder has no idea how he died. He tells Billy that they were in Nicaragua in '84, and if he wants the truth, he should ask the CIA. That's who they were working for. When Billy asks, who was your CIA officer, Gunpowder says it was Grace Mallory. And that's a pretty big surprise to Billy. But even though Gunpowder just told him everything, Billy's not about to let him walk. At the end of the day, Gunpowder is a piece of crap, so he kills him and finishes him off by using Homelander's lasers that come out of his eyes. Now we'll start off episode 3 with A-Train. He's leaving the hospital after a doctor's appointment, and when he gets outside, he sees a familiar face, his brother. His brother knows that something's up, and A-Train admits, yeah, I used to run here, now I have to get driven here. Doctors basically say that it's a coin flip. If I run again, my heart could explode. If I don't, obviously I stay alive. But the question is that a risk I'm willing to take? His brother takes him back to his place where he can get reacquainted with the entire family. He's wearing that ridiculous Africa outfit, and he gets roasted for that. But then his brother shows him a video of a local man who was killed by a superhero. The story that they tell on the news isn't exactly what happened. Nathan wants him to do something, speak out, because he's a part of the Seven, but A-Train tells him it's really not that easy. As for the leader of the Seven, after that little outburst that he had, Ashley goes and tells him that his numbers are through the roof, especially in the Rust Belt. He's up 21 points, and it looks like Homelander's honesty has Homelander back. She also tells him that him and Starlight as a team have a Q rating of 98%. And no one has ever been that high. After leaving Homelander very stiff, Ashley goes and has a meeting with Starlight about who is going to be selected as the winners of the reality show that picks the next 2 members of the Seven. Supersonic is the obvious choice, although Starlight says, I want to talk to him first. But then they get to choice 2, and Starlight differs with the creative team. She wants to pick a superhero that wears a hijab, and they don't think that's going to trend well. But at the end of the day, she has final say. And while Ashley tries to convince her out of it, Starlight throws it on the table and says, there's nothing you can do about it. After leaving the meeting, she grabs Supersonic and secretly tells him that he's going to be in the Seven, but what he should do is turn it down. She says, there's something wrong with Homelander. He's broken. He's threatened to murder me more than once. He's murdered other people, and it's only getting worse. If you join the Seven, it's going to be a disaster, not only for you, but for your family as well. So when they offer it to you, you have to leave and never look back. But this is a lot for him to process, so he needs a moment. Now, Annie's boyfriend, Huey, headed to the Flatiron Building because that's where Billy Butcher and his team have their office. But he's not the only member who's returning. Mother's Milk has also returned. As soon as Huey walks in the room, Billy starts giving him crap for working with a soup for over a year. And when the jokes finally stop, Huey tells Billy, we need to get Ryan somewhere safe. Vicky knows where he is. And that means Stan Edgar knows where he is. But that's something Billy's already thought of. He's already moved Ryan. And he's also planned to go visit Ryan along with the rest of the gang. The only thing is Frenchie can't go. He gets a text message and he's got another matter he's got to deal with. So it looks like it's only going to be Billy, Huey, Mother's Milk, and Kimiko heading up to visit Ryan and Mallory. But before they leave, Huey's going to have to get out of work. He knows that Victoria will know if he's faking a sickness, so he wants Kimiko to break his arm. And she does, and it's painful, but it will give him the alibi that he needs. The group then heads up to go visit Ryan, and Frenchie goes to deal with his matter. And Frenchie's situation has to involve Cherry. When Frenchie meets up with her, she tells him, "I'm in a situation. I went back to work with little Nina. I was moving drugs for her, and a bunch of guys took it from me. They were wearing masks. I don't know who they were." Cherry looks at Frenchie and says, "Come with me." Because at the end of the day, she knows that little Nina is not somebody you want to be indebted to, or somebody who you want looking for you. Frenchie can't, though. He gives her some fake passports and heads on his way. As he's walking back to the Flatiron Building, one of little Nina's guys comes and picks him up. And little Nina and Frenchie have a history. Frenchie used to work for her. And while she doesn't look like it, she is pretty intimidating. She brought him there because she wants to know where Cherry is after Cherry stole her drugs. Little Nina tells him she never got mugged. She just took them. But Frenchie plays dumb. She doesn't really believe him, and she tells him, "I can make it worth your while," but Frenchie says, "I don't do drugs anymore. And the fact that we're working for the CIA means that I can go." So he heads back to the office. Billy and his group, meanwhile, have arrived up to visit Ryan and Mallory. Ryan is thrilled to see Billy, and the group is very confused about Billy's reaction because it's fatherly. They leave Ryan outside with Kimiko, and Billy, Mother's Milk, and Huey head inside to talk to Mallory. And when they tell Mallory about Newman, she has the same reaction that Huey had. She can't believe that she was duped. She asks them, "What's the plan to eliminate her?" And Billy says, "That depends on what you can tell us about Nicaragua. Because a little birdie told me you were Payback's case officer down there. It was a classified job that Soldier Boy never came back from." She plays dumb, but Billy is able to get her to tell them the truth. She headed down to Nicaragua in the 80s to do some secret classified CIA missions. This after Oliver North just really screwed the pooch. And they were funding it by taking the cocaine from Nicaragua and funneling it into urban areas, which doesn't make Mother's Milk too happy. But one day, all of a sudden, the CIA decided to give the troops a little bit of a pick-me-up. So they sent Payback down there, which didn't sit well with Mallory at all. You had the whole group. The TNT twins, Crimson Countess, Mindstorm, Swatto, Black Noir, Gunpowder, and of course, the worst of them all, Soldier Boy. Grace Mallory was sort of the fun police. Grace then gets approached by a Vought associate, a guy named Stan Edgar. He tells him that this is a trial run, but the plan is to have Payback embed themselves and fight alongside the Contra rebels. The way that Grace sees it, though, they don't belong in the military. And Stan reminds her, well, Soldier Boy was in the military and he's a damn hero. And unfortunately for Grace, there was nothing she could do. There were orders from above. Later on, as she's walking through the camp, she overhears a conversation between Stan and Black Noir. And believe it or not, Black Noir didn't want to wear the mask. He tells Stan that he's sick of it. But that all changes when the group is attacked. Their camp is bombarded, shot up, Swatto is killed, Black Noir's face is so charred up that he's reaching for the mask, and Soldier Boy was taken by the Russians. Crimson Countess said that the Russians killed Soldier Boy. They had some kind of weapon or something, and they took his body back with them. At the end of it, she lost 116 men, and Vought got full immunity. That was the day that she decided to make Vought pay. Unfortunately, though, a trail went cold behind the Iron Curtain. They have no idea what happened to Soldier Boy, what happened to the weapon, any of it. That story, though, doesn't sit well with Billy or Mother's Milk. Mother's Milk tells her, "You know what Soldier Boy did to my family, and you never thought I'd want to hear about this?" She then kicks out Marvin and Huey because she wants to talk to Billy alone. And Billy's pissed off, too. He thinks that if she would have divulged this information earlier, it could have saved Becca's life, because he would have been able to eliminate Homelander, which is something that she promised him when he came aboard. So he is pissed off. But as he's chatting with Mallory, Huey gets a phone call from Starlight. She's freaking out a little bit. She was called to a meeting with Homelander and Ashley, and Homelander had a great idea for the television show. A real twist ending. Instead of bringing on the superhero that wears the hijab, they're going to bring back the Deep. The Deep, along with his wife Cassandra, walk in, and Starlight wants nothing to do with them. Even after the Deep apologizes, Starlight can't really forgive him for that whole, sexual misconduct. She asks for a meeting alone with Homelander, and the two get into a pissing contest where Homelander tells her that his numbers are trending up, and whoever has the better numbers has the power. She tries to play her final trump card, the video, and releasing it, which would make Homelander look terrible, but Homelander says, release it. If you do, I might take my wrath out on everybody. So unfortunately for Starlight, she's not going to get her way this time. She calls up Huey, freaking out about what to do. She starts talking about leaving, but Huey says, I know I should agree with you on this, but you got to stick it out. I'm back with Butcher, and we're on to something that can kill Homelander. So I need you to buy us some time and just keep your eyes on him. And Starlight can't really believe what Huey's asking her to do. He's basically asking her to cozy up next to Homelander as he grows more unstable by the hour, the whole time hoping that he doesn't kill her or worse. Huey tells her, I'm sorry, but yeah, if that's what it takes. Unfortunately, the high road isn't working. We have to be as mean as they are. Butcher then comes storming out of the house, and Ryan's the first one to see him and yells, where are you going? But Billy says, to the city. And when Ryan asks, when will I see you again, Billy just says, you won't. This really hurts Ryan, because Billy told him he'd always look out for him, and now he's abandoning him. And Billy tells him, maybe I don't want to look at you after what you did to Becca. Did you ever think about that? That hits Ryan at the core. He yells at Billy, I hate you, and then he runs back in the house. That didn't sit well with any of them. When they get back to the office, Kimiko's the first one in, and she sees Frenchie and asks him, how do you work for that guy? She then poses the same question that Cherry posed to Frenchie. Let's just get out of here. But Frenchie isn't willing to leave. Billy asks Frenchie, where were you? And Frenchie fills him in that he was with little Nina. But that's when Billy realizes that this little Nina fiasco can actually help him out, because Nina is Russian. So he tells Frenchie, set up a meeting between me, you, and little Nina. Because if they're gonna find that weapon, they're gonna have to head to Russia, and little Nina might be able to help him with that. That night, everybody takes off, and it's really just Huey and Billy. And Billy had some time to think about what he did, and he realizes just what a monster he was to Ryan. Huey starts trying to make him feel better about it, but then all of a sudden, Billy pukes all over him, because Billy's been throwing up all day from that 10th V. No word on if either of them watched the finale of American Hero, but the taping was that night. Beforehand, Supersonic had told Starlight that he was planning on telling the producers he didn't want to do it, but she's always been loyal to him, so he's not about to leave her with this psychopath. So when they announced the newest members of the Seven, he's one of them. Then they announced the Deep. And this move wasn't out of the goodness of his heart. In fact, before the taping, Homelander, Ashley, the Deep, and Cassandra all had dinner. Homelander took the liberty of ordering for everybody, and he just happened to order seafood, knowing how uncomfortable that was going to make the Deep. He then made the Deep eat his friend, Timothy, who's a squid. And even Cassandra told him to do it, because they can't hear Timothy begging for his life. But in order to get back in the Seven, the Deep does it. And when they announce the newest member, he walks through the door. Homelander starts giving a speech about how this was actually Starlight's idea. Forgiveness is key. But then he turns to the Deep and says, just stay away from her because she's my girl now. And this is very confusing to Starlight. Homelander says, I just can't keep it a secret anymore. It's time we let the world know. Starlight and I are in love. Hashtag Homelight. Ashley and the rest of the creative team love it. But when they give Starlight the chance to go back on it, she doesn't. She says, yeah, let's go again. Because she remembers what Huey told her. So when they go again, she takes it one step further and she kisses Homelander. But the whole time she is gritting her teeth. She hates it. In episode 4, after Billy puked into Huey's mouth, Huey realized that he must have been on Compound V. Billy tells him it's just Temp V and he's supposed to keep his mouth shut. The next day, Frenchie is able to facilitate that meeting between Billy and Nina. Billy slaps down a duffel bag full of cash and says that he needs information into Russia. And in return for that information, he's going to pay off Cherry's debt, and he threw a few $100,000 in there for Nina's troubles as well. But Nina doesn't want just money. She wants Cherry. Frenchie starts freaking out about it, and Billy has to dismiss him. After Frenchie leaves, he turns to Nina and says there's got to be something we could do, and indeed there is. When the group gets over to Russia, she's got a job for him. Now, one person that wasn't in this meeting was Huey. Huey headed to Vought Tower to meet with Starlight, and Starlight explained what was going to happen on that night's finale of American Hero, the whole home light thing. Huey can't believe that she's going through with it, but she told him, Huey, it's like you said, by any means necessary. This just better work. Their conversation, though, gets interrupted when Homelander walks in the room, and right away, Starlight is worried that Homelander might have overheard their conversation. It gets a little awkward. He tells Starlight, we got to go to a photo shoot, but then he just starts being a dick to Huey. When he makes a pretty rude comment that no boyfriend would want to hear about their girlfriend, Huey wants to stand up to Homelander, but he knows he can't. And it forces Starlight to flash those eyes and say, if you hurt him, or if you hurt anybody that he cares about, I walk. Homelander can't let that happen, so the two head to their photo shoot. Huey then heads off to go meet with Billy and the team. They've secured an airplane, but he does have to call out of work. Victoria finds it a little bit fishy, but she's got her own problems to deal with. That morning, Stan Edgar came to her, and he needs a favor. Homelander is spouting off to the media a big anti-Vought rhetoric, and he needs Victoria to make a statement about it. After all, Homelander did curse on TV. Victoria's just concerned about the repercussions if she does that. Homelander's not going to be happy. And on top of it, she has Zoe to think about, her daughter. But Stan tells her, don't worry about him. His bark is worse than his bite. He's not going to do anything, and he's still scared of me. So when Huey calls up Victoria to call out of work, she's all right with it, but she doesn't tell Huey any of this information. Huey, Billy, Frenchie, Mother's Milk, and Kimiko then get on the plane and head over to Russia. Now, when Huey's girlfriend returns from that photo shoot, she realizes she needs to cover her tracks and put a plan in place. The first person she heads to is Queen Maeve, and she's surprised to find Queen Maeve training because the story is that Queen Maeve hasn't trained in years and she's kind of a drunken slob. But Maeve tells her, that's what I want people to think. Starlight then asks Queen Maeve if she has any idea what BCL Red is, and Maeve says, yeah, that's the weapon that we can use to kill Homelander. Who do you think tipped them off about BCL Red? Why do you think I'm training? Why do you think I haven't had a drink in 4 months? Starlight thinks this is great. The only problem is they haven't found the BCL Red. And if they're going to take down Homelander, they're going to need a team to do so. They're going to need more than just Starlight and Queen Maeve. But the more she talks about getting a team together, the more Starlight realizes that Queen Maeve might be okay with dying. The next person she visits is Supersonic, and Supersonic is all on board with helping Starlight out. But they need to run because they have a team meeting to get to. It's the first team meeting with the all-new 7. Homelander tries to end it pretty abruptly, but the A-Train pipes up because he's got an issue. He tried to talk to Ashley about it at a very Kendall Jenner Pepsi cringeworthy commercial, but Ashley brushed it aside. The A-Train's issue is exactly what his brother brought to the table. This superhero Blue Hawk who is over-patrolling black neighborhoods. Starlight thinks that's terrible, and the A-Train really appreciates her support on this. But while the A-Train is making this speech about how they really should just bench Blue Hawk for a little bit, it could help with their numbers in the African-American community, the Deep gets a text message from Cassandra, and he just regurgitates everything. Basically what Cassandra told him was, these neighborhoods need more superheroes, not less. And on top of it, Homelander's target demo is the same as Blue Hawk, so by sitting him out, Homelander could end up hurting his brand. That makes a lot of sense to Homelander, so he says, yeah, A-Train, no go. He then dismisses everybody from the room because he wants to have a private conversation with Ashley. Ashley tells him that Victoria Newman is planning on having a press conference. It has to do with him, but it's probably no biggie. And he yells at her, you need to find out exactly what she's going to talk about. Do your job. When he leaves the room, he finds a fight going on between the A-Train and the Deep. The A-Train did not take kindly to the fact that the Deep decided to completely ruin his plan on sitting Nighthawk out. But Homelander ends up siding with his boy, the Deep, and it leaves the A-Train in an elevator with the new guy, Supersonic. And as the A-Train is ranting and raving about how much he's done for Homelander and how unappreciative he is, Supersonic decides to make his pitch on joining Starlight and her team. A few hours later, A-Train, Queen Maeve, Supersonic, Starlight, and Homelander get together to watch this Victoria Newman presser. Right before she does, she gets a quick pep talk from Stan Edgar about how this is the right thing to do, and then Victoria takes the podium. But instead of slapping Homelander on the wrist, she actually praises Homelander for shining a light on how corrupt Vought is and their CEO, Stan Edgar. She completely stabs him in the back, and it takes him by surprise, as well as the members of the 7. Because they're sitting there looking at Homelander with a crap-eating grin on his face, and they know full well that he must have had something to do with this. As Stan is being taken out in cuffs, he asks Victoria, why? And she says, I had to keep Zoe safe. When she gets home that night, she gets reminded of the fact that she made the right decision because Homelander is standing in her bedroom, although he came to do his end of the bargain. As he snooped through Stan Edgar's files, he found out that Stan Edgar was ready to stab Victoria in the back as well. But he also found out that Victoria was a soup, so they decided to make a trade. He gives her Compound V that she injects into her daughter, and then he takes off. When he gets back to Vought Tower, he's surprised because Stan Edgar's standing there. Stan's on a leave of absence, but Homelander is in his glory. He's reveling in this. And Stan says, that's fine, you have the company now. No one's there to stand in your way, but nobody's there to also clean up your mess. And eventually, America's going to find out who you truly are and what a failure you are. And that does hit Homelander right in the feels. But that night, as I said, is the season finale of American Hero. This is the big Homelight episode. So Starlight and Homelander have to do something for the press. They walk out of Vought Tower, they're getting their picture taken, and Homelander tells Starlight that he wants to show her something. So he flies her away. They get to a rooftop, and the thing that Homelander wanted to show her is the fact that he killed Supersonic. He tells her that this is actually her fault. He found out about her little coup when the A-Train told her. So here's the deal. No more coups. She is just going to be a loyal servant to him. That's it. And if she so much thinks about betraying him, Huey is going to end up just like Supersonic. And all Starlight can do is just nod and say, I understand. Now, Huey and the group have made it safely to Russia, and they do have the location of the lab, but they do need to do that job for Nina first. It's not all of them, though. It's just Kimiko. And Kimiko has no interest in it. She doesn't want to be Butcher's hired gun, and Frenchie doesn't want to be doing jobs for Nina. But Billy lays down the hammer, saying that's exactly what Kimiko is. And she will do the job. And Kimiko and Frenchie have no other options. Kimiko is going to pose as a prostitute and kill the Mark. So those two head out. But the way that Billy's been treating people hasn't gone unnoticed, especially by Mother's Milk. He kind of yells at Billy for treating both Ryan and Kimiko like crap, and Billy tells him that one of the reasons he's there is to keep the team together. Billy's going to play bad cop, Mother's Milk will play good cop. A few hours later, Kimiko returns, and she has indeed killed the Mark. But she's done with Billy Butcher. She wants out. And she tells Frenchie, let's go away. Get out of here. And for the first time, Frenchie is fine with leaving Billy, but he's not okay with leaving Huey and Mother's Milk. So he says to her, we do this one last job, and then we'll leave. The group gets ready to take off to the lab, but Billy needs to cover his ass by souping up. He injects himself with Temp V, but he's caught by Huey. And Huey right away wants some. He's sick of being treated like a bitch, and he hates the fact that Starlight had to save him from Homelander. But even though he pleads, Billy won't give him any. So Huey just waits for Billy to leave, and he ends up taking it himself. Everybody then heads over to the lab, and they're able to easily get inside. But as they're standing in front of what probably is the tank holding Soldier Boy, a bunch of members from the Russian military burst on in. The group is bogged down, getting shot at, and that is when Billy Butcher shows everybody that he's a soup, saving everybody. But there is one member of the Russian military who has a gun pointed at Mother's Milk. And that's when Huey jumps into action, showing everybody that Huey is also taking Temp V. With everybody now dead, Huey and Billy have some explaining to do. They tell the group it's only temporary, but Billy is pissed off at Huey. Huey thought that Billy would be okay with it after just saving Mother's Milk, but Billy's not. He just walks over to the tank and rips the door off. And sure enough, there is Soldier Boy, standing there alive. Soldier Boy takes all the wires out of his arm, he walks out of the tank, but then he unleashes a burst of energy from his chest. It's directed right at Frenchie, and Kimiko throws Frenchie out of the way and takes the full brunt of the force. Soldier Boy then just casually walks outside, and Frenchie goes to check on Kimiko. She's pretty banged up, but what's really disturbing is she's not healing, and Frenchie starts freaking out a little bit. The group can't even go after Soldier Boy because they have to rush Kimiko to a hospital. Faith in Billy Butcher is non-existent, and Kimiko is clinging to life. In episode 5, Kimiko seems to be okay, at least for now. They're definitely going to have to get her to a real doctor, which means getting her back to the States. In the meantime, Mother's Milk starts watching security camera footage from the testing process of Soldier Boy, trying to find out exactly what the Russians did to him and why exactly he's so powerful, because he wasn't this powerful before. But he also has an issue with Billy. He doesn't like the fact that he became a soup. Their whole mission is to get rid of soups. Billy, though, doesn't really care. In his mind, everything he did was necessary. He then goes to check on Huey, and Huey is hungover just like he was the first time he took Temp V. The group then gets on a private jet, heads home, and as soon as they touch down, Mother's Milk and Frenchie take Kimiko to a hospital. That leaves just the Temp V twins, Billy and Huey. But for the time being, they're just going to both kind of head home. And while they were gone, a lot changed at Vought. With Stan Edgar out, Ashley stepped in as CEO. But really, she's nothing more than a puppet for Homelander. Homelander's really running the show. And he has really surrounded himself with yes people. One of those people is the Deep. So he puts him in charge of crime analytics, a job that he is clearly not suited for. And while we don't know who's in charge of Vought PR, they do a pretty good job spinning the Supersonic story. The story that everybody gets is that he died of a drug overdose. When Huey gets to his apartment, he's watching the news coverage, and the painting that's being pictured is that the stress of joining the Seven just got too much for him and he relapsed. Huey then gets a knock at the door, and it's Annie, and he starts to kind of console her, try to make her feel better, but that's when she reveals that all of that is a lie. It was Homelander who killed Supersonic. And to make it worse, Starlight's blaming herself. One thing that could make her feel a lot better about the situation is if they found a weapon to take out Homelander. And he has to tell her, no, it was a dud. And then he goes and gets her a White Claw because everything that happened in Russia is a lot to process. And he tells her everything. And she doesn't know what she's more mad at. The fact that Soldier Boy is alive and running free in the world now, or the fact that her boyfriend took Temp V. She's mad at him for taking an untested drug from Vought because it really could have killed him. And he tells her, well, we don't have any more anyway. And even if we did, I'm not taking it. That stuff's awful. But she knows he's lying. And it doesn't take much for him to admit, oh my God, no, I loved it so much. For the first time in my life, I was actually powerful. I wasn't scared. Starlight doesn't care how great he felt, as she tells him, that was stupid, and I can't lose you too. So what do we do now? And Huey doesn't have any plans. But he tells her, whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. Starlight wasn't the only one, though, from the Seven that was wondering if they got the weapon. So was Queen Maeve. She heads over to Billy's house to find out, no, they didn't get it. But she also finds a very inebriated Billy Butcher. Billy offers her some alcohol, and Queen Maeve doesn't want to take it because she's 4 months sober, but the reality that Homelander is out of control and their one chance of possibly getting rid of him just went down the drain, it pushes her to drink. Doesn't take long for both of them to get drunk, and they start talking about what their next move is going to be. She also brought him a lot more of Temp V, which she does find ironic because she knows that Billy hates soups, and yet here he is wanting to become one. And the way he looks at it, it's just more proficient for getting his job done. It used to take months to get rid of a soup. He was able to get rid of gunpowder in a second. He tells Maeve, we're all just people, but that V, it amps up the stuff that's already inside you. Somehow this conversation leads to them hooking up. Sexually. But while Billy had just arrived back from Russia, the world finds out that he wasn't the only one, because Soldier Boy also hitched a ride back. He arrives in the States, he just kind of looks like a homeless person, but he starts hearing Russian music coming from a speaker in a truck, and it triggers him to basically explode, causing a massive explosion in the heart of New York City. Mother's Milk finds out when he goes and picks up Janine. He's not a big fan of the fact that Todd is having Janine watch pro-Homelander propaganda, but he ends up canceling his visit with Janine when he sees the explosion and he knows that it must have been Soldier Boy. He's not the only one concerned, though. The figureheads at Vought, i.e. Homelander, Starlight, Ashley, they're also very concerned. But Homelander wants to play it off to the media like it's no big deal. Starlight really wants to get ahead of it. Find this guy, take care of it right away. So Homelander tasks her with doing that while he runs the media blitz. When she gets out of the meeting, she calls up Huey and says, please tell me this isn't who I think it is. And Huey says, yeah, it's probably exactly who you think it is. Huey asks Starlight to look into the crime analytics department, see if they can find him, because Huey and Billy are already on the case. But when Starlight heads down to the crime analytics department, she finds 3 employees. And the amount of work that it's going to take way more than 3 employees. She ends up asking the one girl, where is everybody? And she tells Starlight, the Deep fired everybody. If you're not solely loyal to Homelander, you got axed. And this is the rest of our department. So Starlight definitely has her work cut out for her. But so does Huey and Billy. They arrive at the scene, and it's way worse than they could have imagined. It's also even worse for Huey because he runs into a coworker named Ivy who knows that he had a broken arm. And since taking the Temp V, Huey's broken arm is suddenly healed. So he has to explain that to her so she doesn't go back and tell Victoria Newman that he was just skipping out of work the whole time. He quickly makes an excuse and gets out of the conversation. As they're surveying the damage, they see that Mother's Milk has also arrived, and he is pissed. Mother's Milk is so disgusted by Billy, he says, you know what, screw you guys. I'll go find him myself. But Billy says, what are you going to do when you find him? The reality is you need help, and that means you need us. Let me help you with this, and then you don't have to see me anymore. Mother's Milk knows that he does need some help. He also tells Billy that he's got a lead. It's a guy that goes by the name The Legend. He was the head of Vought before Madeline Stillwell. And he had a really close connection with Soulja Boy. Mother's Milk has a really good relationship with The Legend, although The Legend doesn't really like Billy Butcher too much. But Mother's Milk is convinced that Soulja Boy stopped by to see The Legend. Conversation gets a little bit contentious, but eventually The Legend admits, yeah, he stopped by. He wanted his suit. I held on to it. He also came for his girlfriend's address, so there's a really good chance that he's going to see Crimson Countess next. The trio then heads out to the car, and Billy shows them all the Temp V that he has. He feels like they should take it, but Mother's Milk thinks that they should draw the line. Huey ends up agreeing with Billy. He wants to take the Temp V as well. So in the end, Huey and Billy end up taking it. Mother's Milk sits this one out. They wait till that night to head over to Crimson Countess's place. As Billy and the gang was trying to track down Soulja Boy over at Vought Tower, Homelander has a private meeting with Queen Maeve. He can literally smell Billy Butcher all over her, and he feels like the only reason she hooked up with Billy was to hurt him. But he does have a theory. He doesn't think it's just about the physical stuff. They might have a plan going, and he thinks there's a possibility that they smuggled Soulja Boy in. She denies that there's anything going on between her and Billy, and then the conversation moves to the relationship between her and Homelander. Homelander really was in love with her, but she tells Homelander, from the start, I hated you. But what's more is I pitied you. He can't let Queen Maeve do whatever she wants, so he has Black Noir basically kidnap her. And then they throw Queen Maeve in, quote, rehab. When Starlight finds out what happened to Queen Maeve, she knows it's fishy, and she knows that Homelander had something to do with it. So she storms into Ashley's office and demands to know what's up. But Ashley toes the company line, saying that Queen Maeve is just getting help for her addiction. Starlight looks at Ashley and says, yesterday was Supersonic, and today is Maeve, and tomorrow could be me or you. Look, the reality is you know he's out of control right now. Starlight begs Ashley, where is Maeve? And it seems like Ashley is coming aboard to Starlight's line of thinking that she does need to help out, until all of a sudden she says, I am CEO, and next time you need to make an appointment. And she kicks Starlight out. Annie leaves the office, but she gets a phone call from Mother's Milk telling her about the meetup at Crimson Countess's place. So Annie heads over. She's running late, though. And when Billy and Mother's Milk and Huey burst on in, they catch Crimson Countess camming. And she's making a whole lot of money. We're talking some guy is paying $20 a minute. But in the end, he got what he came for, if you know what I mean. Billy and Mother's Milk end up tying Crimson Countess up and telling her, Soulja Boy, he's coming here tonight. She asks, how did he escape from Russia? And they find it really interesting that she knew the whole time that the Russians had him. She starts begging them to let her go, saying he's going to kill me and all of us. But they don't, because they're going to use her as bait. They walk outside because this is just step one of their plan. After watching that video back in Russia, Mother's Milk has an idea on how to knock Soulja Boy out. But as they're discussing it, Starlight shows up to the surprise of Billy and Huey. And neither are too happy when she tells them that Mother's Milk called her. Mother's Milk just figured that they might need backup. And Huey feels like it's too dangerous for her, but she says, wait, it's too dangerous for me? I mean, what about you? So Huey and Starlight end up taking the conversation to the side. And that's when Huey shows her that he's souped up with Temp V. They start kind of getting into a little bit of an argument about who's supposed to save who and what's the safest route to do this. Huey feeling like he needs to save Starlight, but she says, I don't need you to save me, Huey. I just need you. As those two are discussing all of this, Mother's Milk starts feeling pretty crappy, and that's because he was drugged by Billy. Billy cannot let Mother's Milk attack Soulja Boy. So as Billy puts it, you left me no choice. I had to take you out of this equation. And that's because Billy wants to work with Soulja Boy. When Soulja Boy shows up, he recognizes Billy. Billy tells Soulja Boy, Crimson Countess, she's in there. And I felt like it would be a peace offering. Because what I think we should do is team up. Seems like Soulja Boy's on board because he enters the trailer and sees Crimson Countess. And she starts telling him, this wasn't my idea, I swear. But he asks her, how much did the Russians pay you? And she says, they didn't. And you see a very similar situation happen with these two that happened with Homelander and Queen Maeve. Soldier Boy really was in love with Crimson Countess, but Crimson Countess tells him, "We all hated you." And that's when Soldier Boy does what he came there to do. He cranks that, killing her. It's such a powerful blast that Huey and Starlight get hit by a wind gust, and they know something happened. They rush over to the trailer to see Billy carrying Mother's Milk's body back to the car, and Starlight is real pissed off when she finds out that Mother's Milk was roofied. She gets even more angry when she sees Soldier Boy walk out from the wreckage. It looks like she's about to attack Soldier Boy, but Huey stands in the way and says, "Look, Annie, we wanted a weapon. Soldier Boy's going to be that weapon." She can't believe that he's about to team up with Soldier Boy, and he says, "This is the only way that I can save you from Homelander. Please, join us." But she in turn begs him not to go. And in the end, he leaves her behind. Frenchie obviously wasn't a part of this meeting. He was busy with Kimiko in the hospital. The good news is Kimiko is going to make a full recovery, and she is thrilled when she realizes she has completely lost her powers. While she doesn't get any visitors, Frenchie does. Little Nina was not happy with the job that was done, and she feels like Frenchie still owes her. Frenchie tries to pawn that off on Billy, but Little Nina says, "You introduced me to Billy. This is on you." She hands him an envelope with a father and a daughter that he's supposed to kill, but he has no interest in that whatsoever. He just wants to stay in the hospital with Kimiko watching movies. Nina calls him up later that night to see if the job's done, but he sends it to voicemail. And Kimiko decides that'd be a good night to kiss Frenchie for the first time. He's very into it, but a little nervous, so he says, "I'm going to go get a coffee." And when he does that, Little Nina grabs him. But unfortunately for Kimiko, it leaves her all alone in the hospital thinking that maybe by kissing him, she did something wrong. Also in the hospital is the A-Train. But it's not for a doctor's appointment. Nathan is in really rough shape. He's probably never going to walk again. Earlier in the day, when the A-Train showed up at Vought Tower, he ran into Starlight, who let him know that what he did ended up getting Supersonic killed. She just can't understand the loyalty to Homelander, but he ends up getting rewarded for it because Homelander grants his wish. He has a one-on-one with Blue Hawk. It's pretty awkward, but A-Train demands for an apology because he's patrolling Trenton a little too hard, and Blue Hawk agrees, "Yeah, all right, fine, whatever you want." So they head to the community center, where Nathan and a bunch of the residents were hanging out, and then in walks Blue Hawk with a TV crew. Nathan is pretty appalled, but A-Train tells him, "Look, man, you get your apology, and Vought gets some good PR. This all works out." The apology, though, from Blue Hawk is pretty half-assed. He does agree to donate $10,000 to the community center, but the residents don't just let him off the hook. They start questioning why he killed people, why he did what he did. And while A-Train tries to wrap it up, maybe it's because he was inspired by Homelander's anti-cancel culture, but Blue Hawk starts going at the residents, screaming at them, calling ungrateful, amongst other pretty rude things. And then it gets pretty hostile, with Blue Hawk literally throwing residents around the center. And unfortunately, one of the residents that got really, really hurt was Nathan. As A-Train is standing in the hospital, he has to see Blue Hawk on TV talk about how he stood up to Antifa thugs, which is a complete lie. And he is really questioning his decision. In episode 6, Kimiko feels like she did something wrong. As she's just eating some ice cream, trying to text Frenchie, she gets taken by one of Little Nina's guys. She wakes up in an abandoned building, chained, and right next to her is Cherry. Frenchie then gets brought in, and it's clear that he's been tortured. He's also naked, and he gets chained to a pole. And while Little Nina is emasculating him, Kimiko takes matters in her own hands. She's able to break free of the chains and kills one of the guys with a popsicle stick. Cherry is also able to bust out of her restraints. And at the end of it, all of Nina's guys are dead, thanks to Kimiko. Little Nina is long gone, and Frenchie is saved. Frenchie takes both Cherry and Kimiko back to a place to patch Kimiko up because she's banged up pretty good. And they both are just kind of feeling sorry for themselves. Frenchie makes a comment that no matter how hard they try, they just can't outrun their past lives. But at the end of it, at least they have each other. That is a blip on the radar, though, compared to what's going on at Vought Tower. Homelander, The Deep, Ashley, and Black Noir have gotten video of Crimson Countess's chimp sanctuary just going up in flames. And when they zoom in, they see a very familiar face, even though they don't believe it. It's Soldier Boy. They realize they need to do some kind of crisis management, so Homelander says, "All right, don't worry, I'll find him and I'll kill him." Well, he pulls Black Noir to the side because Soulja Boy was Black Noir's team leader, and he starts asking him his take on it. Black Noir might give Homelander an answer. We honestly don't know, but as soon as Homelander walks away and Black Noir gets on an elevator, he carves out the tracking beacon in his arm, and he flees, getting the hell out of there. Because with Soulja Boy back, he doesn't want to be anywhere near the facility. A couple hours later, the Deep notices that Black Noir cut out his tracking chip. He goes and tells Homelander about it. Homelander is in absolute disbelief, but both Cassandra and the Deep tell Homelander that they feel like Black Noir ran because Crimson Countess was just the start. And if he's going after his whole team, that includes Noir. But the good news is they figure they know where he's going next, and that's the TNT twins. They live up in Vermont. That's the closest spot. Homelander tells Deep, go up there, and if Soulja Boy does show up, you call me. But there is no question that Homelander is sweating this situation. But the Deep is not the only person with that theory. Mother's Milk has the same exact theory, that Soulja Boy is going after his own team. Mother's Milk is sitting in his apartment, gearing up for an absolute war, and telling his theory to Starlight. The good news is Mother's Milk also has the address for the TNT twins, and he doesn't think Billy has it. But at the same time, he knows that it's not going to take long for Billy to get that address. He's going to have to wait, though, because Starlight gets a phone call from Ashley telling her that she's needed at Vought Tower. So Starlight's going to have to leave. But right before she does, she tells Mother's Milk, don't do anything stupid, because right now, it's just on us. Starlight then heads over to Vought Tower because she has a TV hit to do with Homelander. It's propaganda just to say that they have the whole situation completely under control. There's nothing to worry about. But she can tell that Homelander is shook. She gets a little frazzled herself when Victoria Newman shows up to do the hit on TV. Luckily for her, the cameras start rolling shortly after Victoria shows up, and they're able to just lie to the public saying, yeah, we're pretty close to catching this guy. But during the interview, the questions aren't really to Homelander's liking, so he calls the interviewer a hack and storms off. With the cameras off, Victoria asks for a couple of minutes with Starlight, and while she doesn't want to give her that couple minutes, she reluctantly agrees. They head up to an office, and Victoria asks, where's Huey? And Starlight covers for him, saying, oh, he's fishing with his dad. And Victoria says, oh, okay. I was worried that he was scared I was going to pop his head. And that stops Starlight right in her tracks. Starlight starts flashing her eyes at Victoria, but Victoria says, don't worry, I'm not going to kill you or Huey or your families. I actually want to help you. Annie, the fact is you need me. You're all alone. I mean, that hashtag Homelight stuff looks like a hostage video. And now you have to play nice with the Deep. And Maeve, I mean, they say she's in rehab, but really, who knows? I mean, reality is she's probably dead. But you're America's sweetheart. You have 193 million Instagram followers. So lend me your influence and I'll lend you mine. I can protect you from Homelander. You'll finally be team captain for real. And in return, you'll help me boost up my numbers. I'll finally be able to get my education reform bill passed. And while it's a very enticing offer, Starlight stands up and says, no, I'm so sick of people telling me that I have to be a crappy person in order to win. All this whatever it takes crap, I'm done with it. She basically tells Victoria Newman to either pop her head or kick rocks because she's not doing it. And Victoria doesn't pop her head, just telling her, I hope we can keep this between us. It'd be really tough to take out America's sweetheart, but it's not impossible. And just to prove it, she leaves Annie with a nosebleed. But this is going to come as a surprise to a lot of people. Huey was not fishing with his dad. All the theories that everybody had about what Soulja Boy is up to is dead on accurate. Huey and Billy were able to convince Soulja Boy that he needs them, and in return, all they ask is that he kill Homelander. Billy goes off to try to track down the address of the TNT twins, which leaves just Huey and Soulja Boy alone in the hotel room. And Huey asks Soulja Boy, what happened in Midtown? But he tells him, I don't know. I blacked out for about 10 minutes. When I came to, the damage was done. I didn't mean to hurt those people. I'm not a bad guy. Huey asks him, that won't happen again, right? And Soulja Boy just tells him, only if they've got it coming. The awkwardness then gets interrupted because Billy has returned and he has the address for the TNT twins. So the trio heads up to Vermont. But before they do, they have to shoot up with Temp V. But while they're heading up there, Mother's Milk and Starlight are way ahead of them. During the drive, Mother's Milk tells Starlight exactly why he's got beef with Soulja Boy. When he was a little boy, he looked out the window and he saw Soulja Boy pull up on a bunch of kids that were trying to steal a Mercedes-Benz, and he ran to wake up his grandfather and tell him, hey, Soulja Boy's outside. But then all of a sudden, Soulja Boy threw that Benz through their house. It killed his grandfather. Narrowly missed him, but Ever since, he's been terrified that Soulja Boy's going to come back and finish the job. So at this point, he just needs to kill Soulja Boy to get him out of his head. It's obviously going to be a lot easier said than done. They then arrive at the TNT Twins' house, and they realize there's a party going on, or more like an orgy. It's Herogasm 2022. It's exactly as it sounds. It's an orgy with superheroes. And while they weren't invited, Starlight's a big enough name to get her and Mother's Milk through the door. Let me just say, most of the images I cannot show, or my entire channel is getting demonetized. While Mother's Milk and Starlight showed up just to warn the TNT Twins, they realized, though, that they have a much bigger issue because if Soulja Boy shows up, all of these people are in danger. So they got to warn these people to get them out. The first superhero that she recognizes that she sees is Blue Hawk. And she tries to warn Blue Hawk to get out of there, but Blue Hawk doesn't feel like there's any danger, especially after what Homelander said. He even pulls the, do your research, to Starlight of all people. The second superhero she runs into is the Deep. The Deep went there on Homelander's orders, but Herogasm waits for no man, and the TNT Twins had a fish tank. You can see where this is going. It's awkward, but the Deep does fill Annie in on Homelander's plans. And that really boosts Annie's concerns even more because if Homelander does show up and Soulja Boy shows up and these two start fighting, then it's not going to end well for anybody in that house. And to make matters worse for Annie, she's completely unaware of the fact that Soulja Boy has shown up. Soulja Boy, Billy, Huey, they're outside of the house surveying the situation, and the only reason Soulja Boy hasn't shown up yet is because Huey convinced him to give him 3 minutes, find out exactly where the TNT Twins are, so nobody else does get hurt. So while Annie's trying to warn people to get out of there, Huey is naked, walking through the house, and trying to locate the TNT Twins. He does, and as he goes to leave, he runs into a familiar face, the A-Train. Although the A-Train is not there for the orgy. The A-Train went to Ashley earlier in the day looking for answers on what they plan to do about Blue Hawk. But Ashley, who is so stressed out, freaked out at A-Train, telling him that he's got a lot of revisionist history. He's only concerned about this because it happened to him. What about the 3 murders that he caused that Ashley had to clean up? It's a lot for A-Train to think about, but it's clear that Ashley isn't going to do anything but Blue Hawk, so he tried to track Blue Hawk down himself. And he tracked him down to the orgy. When Huey and A-Train run into each other, A-Train starts kind of making fun of Huey for even being there, which Huey reminds him, hey, but you're here too. But then Huey remembers that he's a supe now. So he puts on a robe and says, hey, by the way, you never apologized for Robin. Totally getting ready to beat the crap out of A-Train. But to his surprise, the A-Train does apologize. Because after what Ashley said, he has had time to reflect. And he realizes that those murders really did have an effect on other people. Just like what happened with his brother is having an effect on him. He's finally starting to see the light. But even though he apologized, it wasn't what Huey was thinking, and it's not as satisfying as he wanted to, so he ends up punching A-Train in the face. And the strength of Huey shocks A-Train. But that's when Annie sees the two fighting. She gets in the middle of it and breaks it up. Starlight grabs Huey, pulls him to the side, and says, we gotta clear this house now. But as Huey tries to convince Starlight that Soulja Boy is not going to come in there and kill everybody, Soulja Boy shows up. Huey doesn't want anything to happen to Starlight, so he teleports her out of there, and the two start getting into a fight about Huey, quote, saving Starlight, and Starlight feeling like Huey doesn't need to save her. It all boils down to Huey's insecurity. While he told Starlight originally that her being more powerful didn't bother him, it kind of does. But while those two argue safely away from the house, back inside the house, Mother's Milk gets eyes on Soulja Boy, and he throws a canister that he thinks is going to knock him out, but it doesn't. Mother's Milk then tells Soulja Boy, you killed my family, and he gets ready for a fight that he clearly would lose. And while he doesn't think it, Mother's Milk is lucky because Billy shows up and tells Soulja Boy, hey, we're not killing him. Twins are upstairs. As Soulja Boy goes up to take care of the twins, Mother's Milk is still trying to get at him, and Billy has to literally hold him back. Mother's Milk's so pissed off, he starts attacking Billy, but because Billy is all hopped up on Temp V, it doesn't really affect him. Upstairs, though, Soulja Boy has located the twins, and they start telling him that they had nothing to do with it, and it was actually all Black Noir's doing. But Soulja Boy doesn't even believe that, because Black Noir, out of all of them, was the biggest Vought puppet. They swear that it's true, and then all of a sudden, Soulja Boy gets really distracted by a radio that is playing a Russian song. As he's distracted by it, the TNT Twins decide, you know what, let's try to get rid of him with our powers, but they're so rusty it doesn't work. And the exact same thing that happened in Midtown happens in the house. Soldier Boy just explodes, killing the twins and injuring a whole lot of people while destroying the house. Luckily for Billy and Mother's Milk, they were in the basement, so they're not as banged up, but Mother's Milk is hurt. In the distance, both Annie and Huey hear what's going on, so they rush back to the house. And what they find is a slew of superheroes who are coming out of the wreckage really injured, a lot of them dead. Two guys who seem to be perfectly fine are Blue Hawk and the A-Train. And as Blue Hawk is trying to leave, the A-Train goes up to him, and he's finally ready to get justice. He grabs him by the neck, throws him down on the ground, and then grabs his foot and runs as fast as he can, dragging him behind him, killing him as his body just gets ripped apart on the pavement. But the warning that his doctor gave him rears its ugly head, because eventually the A-Train has to stop. His heart is giving out, and he just collapses to the ground. Back at the house, Soldier Boy comes downstairs and sees Billy and asks him what happened, having no idea that he was what happened. But then another person comes down the steps, and it's Homelander. He's not surprised at all to see Billy Butcher behind this. And then he and Soldier Boy start trading insults back and forth, with them both getting into a ridiculous pissing contest. But then they zip up their flies, and they start to fight. As they're fighting, Annie comes rushing in and grabs Mother's Milk before he makes a terrible decision, telling him that there are people outside that need his help. So Annie and Mother's Milk go and try to help out the victims. But while Soldier Boy seems to be rusty and not really a match by himself for Homelander, Huey and Billy also get involved, and it's 3 versus 1. It looks like it's about to be curtains for Homelander, but he ends up muscling out and flying off. When he gets back to Vought Tower, though, he is concerned because it's the first real test he actually has faced. The trio then make their way out of the house, and as they're leaving, they see Annie and Mother's Milk, and both Annie and Mother's Milk give them a death stare. That night, though, Annie decides to do something about it. She has Mother's Milk film her on Instagram Live saying that there are 12 heroes and civilians dead. A whole lot more are wounded, and Homelander and Vought are going to tell you that it was a supervillain and they have it under control, but they don't, because the supervillain that they're talking about is actually Soldier Boy. He's alive. And the reality is Soldier Boy doesn't care about protecting Americans, and he probably never has, because most heroes don't care about anybody. Most heroes only care about their image. And Homelander is the worst of all of them. He's hurt people. He's done something to Maeve. And truthfully, I don't know what they're going to do to me for telling the truth, but I'm going to keep doing it, and I should have done it sooner. And also, I'm no longer Starlight. My name is Annie January, and I quit. In episode 7, the Vought PR campaign went to work after Starlight's shocking walkout. They claim that she's making all of it up, Soldier Boy isn't real, Maeve is in rehab, and to just put icing on the cake, they say that Starlight is working with a known terrorist whose specialty is human trafficking. That known terrorist is Kamiko. In reality, though, Maeve isn't actually in rehab, but she also isn't dead. She's in the basement of Vought in what might as well be a prison cell because she can't get out. She gets a visit from Homelander, who demands to know where Butcher and Soldier Boy are. He figures that Maeve must know. But that's when Maeve realizes that he's wearing cover-up because he's covering up a bruise. It's the first time that she has seen Homelander actually worried, and she is reveling in it. But then Homelander starts talking about their relationship. How one day he really thought that they would have kids, and it would be the most powerful kid ever born. Homelander's powers and Maeve's powers combined. And she warns him that if you try to stick anything inside of me, I'm going to shatter it. And Homelander gets really turned off by that notion that he would even do something like that, because he wouldn't. He did, however, harvest her eggs. Just in case she ends up dying, her legacy can live on with him. As he's leaving, he tells her, I'm not letting you live, I'm keeping you alive. But while Homelander was talking to Maeve, he probably should be talking to the Legend, because that's where Huey, Butcher, and Soldier Boy are. It's not like the Legend wants them there. It doesn't seem like he has a choice, though. As Soldier Boy gets his rocks off with 2 chicks at the same time, the Legend tells Huey that Soldier Boy's mystique was mainly made up. Yeah, he stormed the beaches of Normandy, but he did it 2 weeks after D-Day. He's also not a great guy, because he was with the Birmingham riots back in the 50s, and there was a little mix-up at Kent State where he got trigger-happy. Yeah, he's not a good human being. But America needed a hero at that point, so Vought just swept it all under the rug. Billy then walks in the room, and he's got a problem. He can't find Mindstorm, one of the members of Payback. Soldier Boy gave Billy a bunch of Mindstorm's last known locations, but they're all coming up empty. And Soldier Boy tells Billy and Huey that Mindstorm bought up a bunch of different cottages. He's paranoid. So you really just got to check him out one by one. And the legend says he's not paranoid, he's bipolar. And that's when Huey gets the idea that if he's bipolar and he's taking medication, they might be able to whittle down where Mindstorm is just by checking local pharmacies. So they get to work and they find a location that fits that narrative. It's in the middle of the woods and they start walking around. Huey and Billy shoot themselves up full of Temp V and they start walking through the forest to try to find Mindstorm. While doing so, Huey notices that there's something coming out of Billy's ear. He's never seen it before. It's pretty gross, and Billy doesn't think much of it. He just kind of swats whatever it is away. But then there's an explosion, because Soldier Boy triggered a booby trap that was set there by Mindstorm. And as Billy is a little bit disoriented, Mindstorm shows up and looks him in the eye, and that's his superpower. He's able to control your mind and put you in a prison where you just die off. That's what he does with Billy, putting him in a prison where he has to relive his horrible childhood with his brother we loved, but his super abusive father. As quickly as Mindstorm showed up, he's gone. Huey tries to get Butcher to wake up, but Soldier Boy says, "You're wasting your time. He's gone." He's trapped in an endless nightmare. He's going to end up dying of terminal dehydration. Huey asks Soldier Boy if there's a way to wake him up, and Soldier Boy says, yeah. I mean, Mindstorm. He put him into this. He can snap him out of it. But all Soldier Boy's thinking about is killing Mindstorm, not having him wake up Butcher. He's not attached to Butcher. He just looks at Butcher as a guy who sacrificed himself for the betterment of the cause, which is killing Payback and getting to Homelander. But Huey looks at Butcher as a guy who saved him, so he's super loyal to him. And even though Soldier Boy isn't interested in helping him, Huey's not giving up hope. But in the meantime, he has to go with Soldier Boy, continuing through the woods to catch up to Mindstorm before he's gone. They end up locating where Mindstorm is camped out at. But before Soldier Boy can kill him, Huey uses his powers to teleport Mindstorm back to Billy. He tells Mindstorm, "Look, man, I just need you to help out my friend. If you do that, I'll teleport you anywhere. I'll get you away from Soldier Boy." So Mindstorm does it. And when Billy comes to, he is very apologetic to Huey. He regrets a lot of the things he did in his youth with his brother that he feels like cost his brother his life. So when he wakes up, he immediately starts apologizing to Huey, but Huey can't figure out what he's apologizing for. When Billy starts to calm down, Huey looks at Mindstorm and says, "Okay, a deal's a deal." But before he can teleport him anywhere, Soldier Boy has returned and he starts attacking Mindstorm, because it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where Huey teleported him to. Huey tries to step in, but Soldier Boy ends up punching him in the face pretty hard. And while Billy wants to retaliate, he knows that he deep down needs Soldier Boy, so he doesn't do anything. Soldier Boy then puts a bag over Mindstorm's head, and Mindstorm tells Soldier Boy exactly what the TNT twins told him, that the entire idea was Black Noir's. But the new wrinkle is the fact that Vought gave him the green light to do it. When Soldier Boy asks why, Mindstorm tells him it's because they had a new guy coming up in the system that they thought would be better than Soldier Boy. That person was Homelander. But the real interesting part is that Soldier Boy is Homelander's father. Soldier Boy gets so angry, he bludgeons Mindstorm to death. And then they just take off back to the Legends place. And Black Noir is currently camped out, hiding from Soldier Boy at an old pizza arcade that he used to go to as a kid called Buster Beavers. He has fond memories of this place, even though it's completely run down and abandoned. But as he sits there alone, his imagination starts running with him, and he starts being joined by the cartoon characters on the wall. And they give you the backstory on exactly what happened with Vought, Soldier Boy, Black Noir. And what it boils down to is Soldier Boy was a bully that everybody was sick of, but nobody was standing up to. So Stan Edgar gave Black Noir the green light to do something about it in that moment. So as they were supposed to be fighting the rebels, Payback completely turned on Soldier Boy and attacked him instead. It wasn't the rebels, and it wasn't a bomb that ended up burning up Black Noir's face, causing him to constantly wear that helmet. It was actually Soldier Boy. But Soldier Boy couldn't fight off Black Noir, Crimson Countess, Mindstorm, and the TNT twins by himself. Eventually, they were able to get him down to the ground and knock him out. Then, they just shipped him off to Russia. And that is why he's an absentee father. Of course, Homelander doesn't know any of this. He's currently working the Vought PR spin. He's got a rally to go to for Robert Singer for president, but he spends most of it talking about Starlight and how she made everything up. When he finally gets off the stage, he heads to a barn that's close by, but he's joined by Victoria Newman. She tells Soldier Boy, "I'm going to tell you the truth because nobody else will. You need to pull your crap together, admit it's Soldier Boy, and take control of the situation. You just spent the last 20 minutes talking about Starlight instead of the next president of the United States. You're Homelander, and you're flailing." And that's when Homelander grabs her by the throat. As she gasps for air, she says, "You need someone you can trust. I'm talking a strictly transactional relationship. You help me out with one small favor and I help you." She then pulls out a piece of paper with an address, and we can only assume that it's the address of where Ryan is located. He then releases her from his grip, and she takes off. But it's become clear to anybody that was at the rally and Vought that Starlight is living rent-free in Homelander's head. And Starlight is camped out with Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and Kimiko, who is back on the mend. Frenchie and Mother's Milk sit down and they start looking over some surveillance footage, and they can't figure out why the item that Mother's Milk chucked at Soldier Boy didn't knock him out. Because in the video they're watching, it seemed to. So they start combing over a bunch of chemistry notes. As they're doing that, Annie is in the other room with Kimiko patching up her wounds. But Kimiko has a favor to ask. She needs Annie to go back to Vought and get Compound V, the permanent stuff. Annie really doesn't want to do it, but Kimiko makes an impassioned plea, and at the end of it, Annie agrees to go. And as Annie heads off to Vought, Mother's Milk and Frenchie are still in the living room trying to figure out why the gas they used didn't work. As they're doing that, that rally that Homelander was at is on the TV, and they're talking about Robert Singer's likely VP, a guy named Lamar Bishop. But that's when Frenchie, who is not watching the TV, he's actually trying to figure this out, has an epiphany. It wasn't gas, it's vapor. The Russians were using a nerve agent, something that would kill the normal person, completely shutting down their organs, but the Soldier Boy, it just knocks them out. And if they're going to get some, they're going to have to go back to Russia. Sounds like a great idea to Mother's Milk, but then he gets an alert on his phone, and it's from his daughter's Instagram, who is posing with Todd at that Homelander rally. So Mother's Milk takes off over to their house, and he waits Todd out. And when Todd arrives, Todd can't figure out what the big deal is. Mother's Milk explains to Todd that everything he's talking about is nonsense, because Todd clearly believes everything he reads on Facebook. But when Mother's Milk reminds him that Janine is his daughter, Todd fires back a shot like Janine needs a real man in her life, and Mother's Milk ends up knocking him out. With just Frenchie and Kimiko back in the apartment, Kimiko lets Frenchie know that Annie left to go get her Compound V. And just like Annie, Frenchie can't figure out why Kimiko wants it. But Kimiko shows Frenchie the message she gave to Annie, which was at first, Kimiko hated the V. But that's because she didn't choose it. Now, she is choosing it. It's her choice. For years, she blamed her powers for her problems. But now she knows that the V doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. It just depends on who's using it. And she plans on using her powers for good, to fight for those that she loves, which includes Frenchie, who she refers to as her family. So Frenchie gets on board and they just wait for Annie to return. Annie is able, by the way, to sneak into Vought. She gets into the lab, finds the Compound V, but then she also notices notes on the Temp V, and it's not good. It causes lesions on the brain, basically turning your brain into Swiss cheese, and taking 3 to 5 doses could kill you. So this is information she's going to want to get to Huey. As she's leaving Vought Tower, she ends up running into Homelander, though. Homelander tries to bully her into going to the Vought studios and recanting everything she said, but she gets Homelander to admit that Homelander was the one who killed Supersonic. And Homelander is completely unaware that Annie went live on her Instagram. So all these people are hearing this. It gives her the security she needs to get in the elevator, and Homelander tries to play it off like they were running lines, but it's pretty clear that they weren't. As soon as she gets outside, she calls up Billy, asking where Huey is because he's not answering his cell phone, and she fills Billy in on the dangers of Temp V. That's probably what was going on with Billy's ear. Billy, who had just gone through that mental prison where he felt guilty about what he did to his brother, and he sees the similarities in Huey, feels guilty for introducing Huey to such a dangerous product. But when it comes time to actually tell Huey about it, he starts to. He says, "Yeah, I got to talk to you about the Temp V." He pivots and says, "We got to swing by the office and get some more. And then, we're all going to finish this job." And the big piece in that job is Soldier Boy, who is in the room, and he makes a phone call to his son, Homelander. He explains to him that years ago he gave a sperm sample. That sperm sample became Homelander. And the craziest part is, if they just would have kept him around, he would have given Homelander the spotlight. But you get the sense that now he's not really willing to do that. Back with the woman that is trying to kill Homelander's brand, Annie returns to the apartment, and Annie is still trying to get a hold of Huey. Kimiko asks her, "What are you going to do?" And Annie tells her, "I'm going to save Huey." She then hands over the Compound V to Kimiko, and Frenchie shoots her up with it, so her powers are back. And then finally, the Vought PR machine and Ashley weren't just working with the Starlight situation, they were also working with the A-Train. They know what the A-Train did, but the story they're going with is that it was all Soldier Boy. The A-Train actually tried to save Blue Hawk. And the A-Train finds this out in a hospital bed. He wakes up having just undergone heart surgery. And the heart he has is now Blue Hawk's. And then over with the Deep, he tries to have a threesome with Cassandra, which is cool. I mean, I find her attractive, but an octopus named Ambrosia. And yeah, Cassandra's not cool with that. So that relationship might be on the rocks. And then finally, in episode 8, Soldier Boy tells both Huey and Billy that he is the father of Homelander. And ever since, he's kind of been acting weird. Billy is trying to act like it's business as usual, though. And the plan is to go get Noir, kill him, and then the next and final stop is killing Homelander. First, though, they do have to stop and get some more Temp V. On the trip to go find Noir, they stop off at a gas station, and Billy's conscience gets the best of him. After being in that headspace, he does realize how much Huey reminds him of his own brother, and he can't let Huey, in good conscience, take more Compound V. So he does the only way to protect him, Billy Butcher style, knocking him out and leaving him at that rest stop. Then he just gets in the car, and Billy and Soldier Boy take off to finish the job. And because he's stuck at a gas station, Huey has to call the only person he thinks will answer, and that's Starlight. Starlight picks him up a little while later on her way over to the apartment where she's planning on meeting with Frenchie and Mother's Milk. And Huey apologizes for everything. He tells her about the latest development with Homelander and Soldier Boy. And she reveals to him that taking that Temp V is very dangerous. Huey had no idea, but now Billy's reaction makes a lot more sense. Starlight looks at it like Billy's a jerk for not telling him, and Huey looks at it like Billy saved his life. Annie then gives him a nice dose of I told you so, but then she gets a phone call letting her know that there's another person waiting at the apartment, and it's Queen Maeve. After Starlight's social media quest to get answers on what happened to Maeve, a lot of people came out in droves to Vought Tower. Vought knew that they had a possible riot on their hands, so they had to drug Maeve up and secretly move her. But the gas that knocked her out only worked for so long, and Maeve was able to break out of the Brinks truck that she was being transported from. So she headed to go see some friendly faces, and that's how she ended up in the apartment. Maeve is really, really appreciative of everything Starlight did. But now they need to figure out what to do about Soldier Boy and about Homelander. Huey lets the group know about Homelander and Soldier Boy's connection, and there's just a lot of question marks around it. Like, they just don't know what's going to happen when these two get in the same room. What they're worried about is that they start fighting, and Soldier Boy ends up exploding like he did, and Vought Tower crumbles, which is going to kill a lot of innocent people. Because of that, Annie makes a phone call over to Vought Tower, warning them about this to evacuate the building, but they just hang up on her. So the group starts spitballing, and one of the ideas is to take down Soldier Boy before he takes down Homelander. They can do that thanks to Frenchie. He was able to secure some nerve gas. It's supposedly the only gas in the United States, powerful enough to take down Soldier Boy. But Huey's main focus is on saving Billy. And while it isn't going to sit well with the group, he makes a pretty compelling case. Now they just need to go find Billy and Soldier Boy before they head over to Vought, and they figure that they can find him at the Flatiron Building. So far it's been a very busy day for that group, but it's also been a very busy day at Vought Tower. Vought stock has been crumbling since Starlight's feed went viral, where Homelander basically admits to killing Supersonic. If that wasn't bad enough, Ashley and the Deep have to go to him and tell him what happened to Queen Maeve, how she broke out. But as they're trying to get the words out to tell him, Black Noir walks through the door. He tells Homelander that if Soldier Boy comes, he's going to end up trying to kill everybody, so they got to kill him first. But after finding out that Soldier Boy is his father, he's kind of reluctant to do that. He always wanted a father figure, and there he was the entire time, alive. He just didn't know it. He asked Black Noir, what was he like? I mean, you were on his team. And Black Noir just tells him he was a bad dude. But then Soldier Boy asks him, did you know that he was my father? And Black Noir has to keep in mind that Homelander knows everything. He can see his face. So he admits, yeah, I did. And that's when Homelander kills him, literally ripping his heart out of his chest. So now everybody from Payback is dead. He then goes to meet with Ashley, the Deep, and A-Train, and they're freaking out because they heard Starlight's message. They know that Soldier Boy is coming for him. But they get even more worried when Homelander places Black Noir's helmet on the table and says that he's dead because he was keeping secrets. The Deep asks him, what can I do to help? And that's when Homelander remembers the conversation he had with Victoria Newman. She gave him the location of Ryan, but she wanted something in return. So Homelander sends the Deep to go kill Lamar Bishop, the likely Vice President of the United States, which the Deep does. Homelander then embarrasses both Ashley and the A-Train, just dressing them up and down. Over with Homelander's father, he's also having reservations, it seems, about killing his own flesh and blood. He tells Billy all about his own father. The story that everybody got was that Soldier Boy grew up on the streets of the greatest city in the world, South Philadelphia, and he was a happy kid and he saved the Nazis, but all of it was crap. His dad was disappointed in him. He was embarrassed and ashamed. Soldier Boy just signed up for the Vought trials and became a superhero that way. And when he finally faced his dad as a hero, his dad told him, "You took the easy way out." He always thought he had kids out there, and he figured one day he would be able to right the wrongs of his dad. Be the exact opposite of him. And Billy tells him, Homelander is not your kid. He was born in a test tube. You didn't raise him. He's the reason that you were rotting in Russia. And then he reminds him of the fact that they do have a deal. Soldier Boy ends up leaving the room, and a little while later there's a knock at the door, and to Billy's surprise, it's Queen Maeve. But she's not alone. She's with the whole group. They start demanding to know where Soldier Boy is because they want to stop him. Billy still wants to go after Homelander, but they try to convince Billy that it's actually Soldier Boy and not Homelander that needs to be stopped. But the person they should have been trying to convince was Queen Maeve, because she ends up taking that nerve gas and chucking it out the window. She then breaks Mother's Milk's gun and tells them Billy's right. Homelander needs to die. Annie's ready to step in and stop Maeve, and Maeve tells her, "I don't want to hurt you." But that's when Soldier Boy shows up and says, "She won't, but I will." They realize that now is not the time to pick the fight with Soldier Boy. They're just not prepared. Soldier Boy and Billy then lock the group up, and they take off for Vought Tower. It doesn't take too long for Huey and the Starlight group to bust on out, though. They know that Maeve, Soldier Boy, and Billy have a head start, but they need to formulate a plan. The bad news is they did lose that nerve gas, but Frenchie says, "I think there's one place that we might be able to get some more," and luckily we're heading there anyway. It's Vought Tower. So the plan is going to be for Frenchie and Kimiko to go to the lab and Frenchie start getting his Bill Nye the Science Guy on, while Huey, Mother's Milk, and Starlight try to distract Soldier Boy. All of this is going to be way easier said than done. They head over, but Billy, Maeve, and Soldier Boy have already arrived. And questions about how Soldier Boy and Homelander would act once they got in a room are answered pretty quickly. Homelander pitches Soldier Boy on teaming up, and then he introduces Soldier Boy to his grandson, because Homelander ended up going and finding Ryan, and he ended up saying everything right this time. He basically was the exact opposite of Billy. When the topic of Becca got brought up, Ryan thought that Homelander would have the same reaction that Billy had. He couldn't believe that Homelander wasn't mad at him, and Homelander told him that mistakes happen, and he's always going to love him. So Ryan was more than happy to come along with Homelander. He's even started calling him Dad again. And when he meets Soldier Boy for the first time, he calls him Grandpa. But while Soldier Boy told Billy that he wanted to do things differently from his own father, turns out the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He tells Homelander how disappointed he is in him, how Homelander is too soft to be his kid. And then he chokes him. No one's really coming to Homelander's defense because they're all there to watch Homelander die. And it's Ryan who uses his powers to knock down Soldier Boy. Homelander then looks at Ryan and tells him, "Get back upstairs," so that Ryan will be safe. And that's when Soldier Boy straight up bodies Ryan, knocking him down, and he's bleeding from the head. And that doesn't sit well with just about anybody. It not only pisses off Homelander, it pisses off Billy as well. And now we got a situation where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Both Billy and Homelander use their powers to blast Soldier Boy through a plate of glass, knocking him down. Homelander then turns around to deal with Ryan and see how he's doing, while Billy goes to attend to Soldier Boy. And Soldier Boy can't believe that Billy is doing this because it was Billy who was the one who wanted Homelander dead so badly. Now he's got his chance and Billy's going back on it. But Billy explains that Soldier Boy isn't supposed to go after the kid. That's not part of the deal. The kid is his wife's. And when Soldier Boy realizes that Billy Butcher is sticking up for the son of Homelander after Homelander had sex with his wife, he says, "Billy, you're softer than he is." And the two start getting into a big fight. Homelander goes to join, but he's stopped by Queen Maeve, who is out for vengeance. As that is going on, Huey and his group were able to get to Vought Tower. Huey headed to the intercom system to try to get everybody from Vought out of there before catastrophe hits. Frenchie and Kimiko headed to the lab, and Frenchie started doing his thing, and Kimiko started protecting him once security came. Frenchie ends up getting injured and shot in the leg, but he is able to finish up the gas and give it to Kimiko to head to the TV studio where the fight is going on. And speaking of the fight, Mother's Milk and Starlight have joined in. And it has gotten bloody. I'm talking like Queen Maeve has lost an eye. In the other room, Soulja Boy is just too much for Billy, Mother's Milk, and Starlight. And when Kimiko shows up with the gas, Soulja Boy throws her to the side like a rag doll. Huey is watching all of this from the control room and he wants to step in. He's got one last vial of Temp V, but he decides to actually heed Annie's advice and let her do her thing. Instead of intervening, he just bumps up all of the lights, giving Annie way more power than she's used to. And with that power, she knocks Soulja Boy down and he's a little bit wobbled. It frees up the group in enough time to trap Soulja Boy and stick that gas mask on him. But as they're trying to knock Soulja Boy out with the gas, Queen Maeve is able to stab Homelander in the ear with an object, which frees her up, and it seems like they're actually going to win this thing. But then they notice that Soulja Boy is gearing up to have one of his big explosions. And Billy looks over and sees that Ryan has re-entered the room. He goes to protect Ryan, and it looks like the group of Kimiko, Mother's Milk, Starlight, they're just going to die at the hands of Soulja Boy. But that's when Queen Maeve steps in, grabbing Soulja Boy, flying him out of Vought Tower, where he explodes. All things considered, everybody other than Queen Maeve seems to be doing okay. But that includes Homelander. The group is ready for yet another fight, but as Billy is checking on Ryan, Homelander walks up, and it seems like he's ready to kill Billy Butcher. That is until Ryan tells him, "Dad, I want to go." And even though Billy doesn't want Ryan to go with him, he doesn't have a choice. Ryan and Homelander walk out of the room. Billy suddenly doesn't feel so good, and he collapses to the ground. A few days later, he finds out that he only has maybe a year left to live. All that Temp V did its damage. Most of the world, however, is mourning the loss of Queen Maeve, but she's actually not dead. She was saved by Kimiko and the rest of the group, taken back to the apartment and bandaged up. She's still on the mend and she lost an eye, but with the world thinking she's dead, she can finally start a life of her own with Elena. And in case you're wondering, Vought also knows that she's alive, but they just deleted the footage. And since Maeve survived the blast, so did Soulja Boy. But Soulja Boy's body was taken by Grace Mallory and put into a chamber that will keep him alive, but also keep him sedated. Billy's group ends up going to the Flatiron Building office, which, by the way, that includes Mother's Milk, who finally told his daughter the truth about why he's so anti-soup. And they start talking about the newest member of the group, which is going to be Annie. She's done being Vaught's little puppet. The group has also found their next target. It's going to be the future Vice President of the United States, Victoria Newman. Now we know why she had Homelander do what he did. And speaking of Homelander, he shows up at a rally and introduces all of his fans to his son, Ryan. But there's also a lot of protesters at this rally who are anti-Homelander. And when one of them throws a can at Ryan's face and it hits him, Homelander reacts by killing that person on the spot. Nobody in the crowd knows quite sure what to do, except Todd, because of course Todd is there, and he starts cheering, and the entire group starts cheering. Homelander gets a giant smile on his face, and Ryan gets a bit of a smirk as well. And that is how Season 3 of The Boys ends. Thank you so much for getting this point of the recap. Consider subscribing to this channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this recap. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. I do have a Patreon link. It's in the description. Go click on it. You'll get stuff. I also have merch. Go click on that. You can buy stuff. And if you want to leave nasty comments, one thing you can do is F off, because I don't have time for that. Too much negativity. It's one of the reasons I usually don't read comments anyway. But I do appreciate you getting to this point of the video.